Hey guys, thanks for having me. I'm Matthew Harris. I'm a sophomore and I'm a crop and soil science major. I'm doing my presentation today on GMOs. It's a very hot controversy and there's two strong opinions about them. So I want to ask a question at the beginning of this, and I want you to think about it throughout my presentation and come up maybe with your own answer. But do we really need to worry about our third world countries, and if they get food or not, or should we let them have that worry themselves, or is that something we need to take upon us as Americans? So GMOs are genetically modified organisms. What is altered genes for desired traits? So you find a trait that you would want to see portrayed in a plant. For example, soybeans. I'll talk more about that here shortly. Most foods contain GMOs unless they say they do not contain them. We're one of the few countries that don't require to say GMOs. So it's it's a good, how do I put it? It's very good if you can say that it's not GMO in America. So they don't cause harms to humans or animals. That's been done by a lot of companies. Monsanto, they've funded research on this. They say actually it wouldn't affect you until you're actually like 260 years old, and that's in the slightest way it could affect you. And this does not include, this is a very, very popular misconception, does not include steroids or hormones. So if you hear about all cows getting steroids, chickens getting steroids, also antibiotics, this has nothing to do with GMOs. So GMOs were first created in 1973. They weren't introduced to the farmers till I think the late 1800s to the early 1900s, and they weren't put on the shelf until, as it says, in the 1990s, because they were trying to figure out if they were safe or not. So every other country requires you to say that it's GMO. England, I know Europe is very peculiar about GMOs. They don't even accept them for the main part. Japan's the same way when it comes to certain beans. But the United States and Canada are only two countries that don't require you to say that it is genetically modified. That's how it works. It's very, very expensive. What you do is you find a desired trait, like for example Roundup Ready. They found plants growing outside of Monsanto where they were making Roundup, and after years and years of the grasses dying, they finally found grasses that were living while they were making Roundup. So they found that trait, and they started inserting it into plants. Like, there's two ways you can do that, and one is called, it's like basically this big box, and it's called bombardment, and it's like shotguns going off. You put the gene in there. It's a lot more scientific than what I'm explaining it to you. And then you put the plant's genes in there that you want it to go into, and it's just like shotguns going off. And it's very, very low success rate. It's less than 1%. So after they do that, they have to find the plant with the gene in the correct spot, because it just puts it in random spots. So that's very low success rate. Also, it's done by a bacteria, which takes it into the crop. It's also very low success rate because obviously the bacteria doesn't know where to put it in the crop. So they have to study all the plants after this is done to figure out which one has it in the right spot, and then they can reproduce this crop to get more and more of it. 91% of the acres planted in the U.S. is all genetically engineered crops, as corn, beans, and cotton. Wheat's another one. You don't hear too much about that. I'll touch on that a little bit. There's not much in wheat. But it just goes to show how close we're getting to 100%. And this number, it'll probably stay around this area, because this number right here is organic farmers, and there's always going to be some organic farmers, so we're never going to reach full 100%, in my opinion. One crop they do is GMO is soybeans, and they're Roundup Ready. This is resistant to the herbicide Roundup. 95% of all the soybeans grown in America are Roundup Ready. And what this does is, a lot of beans are planted after you harvest your wheat. And when you harvest your wheat, it throws seeds. Some seeds get through the thresher, and they get thrown in the field. So the wheat will start growing again. So if you don't have Roundup, you have to postpone your planting of your beans, with shortening the growing period, which hurts your yield. So you can till these in the wheat in the ground and then put the soybeans in. Now that you have Roundup, you can plant your soybeans knowing that you're going to have wheat come up, and then you can spray your soybeans to kill the wheat that has sprouted, but your soybeans will be fine. So therefore you have a longer growing period. Longer growing period always amounts to higher yields. And then it minimizes your inputs because you're not going across the field as much. Corn is a little more complicated. I touched on it a little bit in my training demonstration, but they're also Roundup ready. And they have, the main thing is different maturity periods. That's one of the main things. What it is it ranges from about 90-day corn to 120-day corn. So your 90-day corn, your window of when it needs rain is earlier than when your 120-day corn needs rain. So you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. And if you don't get a rain here for your, let's put an average 105-day corn, if you don't get a rain here, then your corn crop's ruined. Also, it doesn't make all your corn ready at once. And you have corn, if you have corn ready and sitting in the field, it'll lose test weight, and they'll dock you for that at the elevator, and you can lose actually a lot of money from that. Wheat doesn't get talked about too much just because it happened a long time ago, but wheat actually used to be very tall. I think grew up to about 8-9 feet. And the problem with that was it used all its sugar, all the nutrients in the ground to use vegetative growth, which we had no use for. So what Norman Borlaug actually did was insert dwarf genes into the wheat. So now you see wheat all the time. It doesn't get it pretty much higher than this. What that does, like I said, it reduces the energy it puts into vegetative growth, and it focuses on seed. So we get a lot more grain, and that was substantially increased yield. He actually did that in South America first to help them. Another importance, like I've been saying, it'll cut your costs while maximizing your yields. With the population increasing, we need yields. The land is not increasing, that's a fixed object. And like I said, it helps the third world countries. They're being kind of stingy with it now because the problem with third world countries is they have one growing season, and that determines their food for that whole year. So when you introduce a new crop, they're very reluctant to it because they have one that's working and getting them through their winter with food. And they don't really like to change it up because, like I said, if something were to happen, then they won't have food for that year. And also, when you start introducing GMOs, you got patents, and they have to rely on companies from America like Monsanto, just to keep giving them seed because they can't technically replant the seed again because that can cause a lot of legal problems. And then it maximizes farmers' profits, which farmers are obviously aiming towards. So it's hard to find a farmer that's not for GMOs. Future production, like I said, this is the main focus in increasing yields. There's, like I said, no more land. There's a couple other things like variable rate technology. That's the point though. No sign of slowing down. Monsanto, it's crazy the amount of money they pump into these research to try to beat their competitor, find a new seed that does something different so Monsanto can beat Dyna-Gro or Decab and stuff like that. Here's a graph showing how close, this is corn, BT corn, and soybeans. It shows how close we're getting to 100%. It started in 1996 is when they started introducing it, and we're starting to plateau actually because we're getting so close to 100%. And like I said, we probably won't ever hit that full 100% in America. And here's an interesting topic. I'm looking to get some opinions out of this. They're starting to breed GM animals that should say for recreation. So super cows, pigs, and glow-in-the-dark animals. And I have a picture right here of fish that actually glow in the dark. Now this is nothing. This is no dye. It's nothing injected into the animals. It's just traits that have been inserted into its genetics. And down the line, they found that they glow in the dark, and now they have colors, and they're actually on the market at the moment. So I think this. You think we should care about the third world countries? Just think of that. I want your feedback on the glow in the dark, especially those of y'all that are for GMOs. How do you feel about recreational, like those fish, for example? Because compared to just production-wise, like food, like this is just for pure recreation. They're not helping us at all. Does anybody think that's inhumane? Just curious.
I think to an extent, I guess, but I guess it would depend on how well you take care of those fish. I mean, they're now living organisms. It's not like you're eating them.
Exactly.
On the other hand, they didn't do a glow-in-the-dark pig as well.
They have glow-in-the-dark pig?
Yes.
I'm sure they
I found out about that.
They do?
Yeah, in 2005, they did a glow-in-the-dark pig. That was around the same time they were talking about Dorothy the sheep when they started cloning.
Okay.
The third world country issue, I'm more concerned with community and how people interact with each other and self-sufficiency. So if more people are taking care of themselves and growing their own food and coming together as communities to work together, then farmers would be less dependent on these big companies having to provide them with the seeds, when they could be growing natural seeds and not worried about their yields.
Exactly, and put less pressure on the American farmers.
Exactly.
That way, if we can get, decent seed. The problem is with, like I said, in the third world countries, Africa, for example, my advisor's in Africa doing this actually right now. They're not open to anything. So, for example, Roundup Ready 1 soybeans patent just ran out. So, you can plant the seeds, you can harvest them, you can plant them again. There's nothing that says you can't do that. 2 years ago, you couldn't. That was illegal. But they won't. They still won't accept it. The change over there. We think that our old farmers are, really stubborn, like they won't change. These people do not change. She has to go over there. She's from there, which helps her. She has to become part of the community first. She has to gain that trust as a person. She can't just go in there as a researcher and say, hey, try this will do better. That does not work. She's over there. She probably goes there 3 times a year for about a month each, just to stay part of the community. And now she's slowly introducing these new seeds into their community. Because like you said, that's important, very important over there. And she has experienced that, and it's pretty cool. Knowing that they're not, you can have all this information in the world and they're not going to accept it. Any other questions? Got a couple references in here. So that's pretty